My name is Shannon Lundeen. I'm a lifelong resident of Charlestown, which is part of Boston. I'm a person in long-term recovery from substance use disorder for 18 years. I'm part of the Charlestown trauma response team in Charlestown. So whenever there's a traumatic event that happens in the community, myself along with the other trauma team members respond.
My name is Michael Kane. My nickname is Smokey, born and raised here. And this area is huge to me, because I began going to school over here at the Harvard Kent, ended up over here at this particular Harvard Kent, and then ended up at St. Catherine's. So these are three schools that I've gone to. I began my drinking and drugging journey in this particular area. This is Hay Square, Charlestown. Drinking age back then was 18, so I used to buy my booze out of McCarthy's Liquors. And so this is obviously an impactful area for me, because this is where I'm remaining to stay sober at 55 Bunker Hill Street. This is where the local Alcoholics Anonymous meetings are held. And I'm 12 years sober as a result. I wished I could have paid a little more attention in these particular schools, but here I am.
My name is Susan, and I'm basically at 92 Monument Street. And on May 7th, 2013, my son Stephen was walking down the street to the left over here with a friend, and there was a court fight right here up in the stairs. Stephen was going to the Bruins game, and I just talked to him on the phone, and I was ready to come and meet him. I just got off the phone with him, and within minutes, my next phone call, I was on the Mass Pike coming into Boston at the last toll. I received a phone call saying that my son Stephen was shot, and I said I was going to go to Mass General, and she said, "I hate to say this, but are you sitting down?" Stephen passed away, and at that time I floored the car. My whole world just went. I was driving, and I managed to pull over the car on the side of the road. The car went on fire. Something in the engine stopped me. State police came. They addressed the vehicle. At this time, I stood knowing that my son was dead, and I had no way to get to him. And that's when the trauma set in. I was on the Mass Pike, and someone pulled over, and I immediately jumped in their car, and they brought me right to this scene, which is right here. This is where the community met me. I came from Medford Street. My son laid basically right here. I was told he was shot due to whoever was fighting. He was on the stairway, and then at that time the gun went off and it went into Stephen's heart. And then he shot him again right here.
I'm George Dighton. I'm a member of the Charlestown trauma team. And this spot here is kind of where me getting involved with trauma happened. In 2013, another member of the trauma team's son was murdered right there on that corner, and your son Stephen was good friends with my children, and we were first ones down here, and I was probably one of the first people to see Susan when she arrived after she got the phone call, and the original trauma in my life happened right over there at 120 Old Ironside Way, where I lost a brother and sister in a fire, and my mother was burned 90% of her body. That was when I was 13. So this whole area has a big significance in my life.
So this is the Edwards Middle School in Charlestown, and where we're walking into right now is known as the Pit. And so I started hanging up here when I was about 12 years old. There was probably about 20 of us kids that hung up here regularly. And so we even call ourselves OPC, the original Pit Crew. I started drinking up here when I was 12. I started stealing cars. And I think it was, when I was 12 years old, it's that awkward age where you start hanging around boys. And I remember, I always felt not good enough. I always felt like I was ugly, like I was worthless, like I was stupid. And so I started drinking up here when I was hanging out with boys. And what I liked about that was that I could kind of get out of myself flirt with boys, be funny, or at least I thought I was being funny. But it was also where like a lot of trouble started for me. I think that I felt the way that I felt at that age because of my home life. My father was an alcoholic and a drug addict, and he was in and out of my life till I was about 10. He used to physically abuse my mother on a nightly basis, and I witnessed that. You hear a lot of people say that marijuana or alcohol is the gateway drug, but I believe trauma is. And so, you know, when I was a little girl, I used to sit on the couch and physically hold my mother while my father would like hit her, punch her in the head. And I was 5 years old, and I remember this. And, you know, he was leaving, and I ran to go lock the door, and he kicked the door in, and the doorknob split my head open because I was trying to lock the door. And I remember my mother hid me in the bathroom with a towel on my head because I was bleeding, and she was afraid that the cops would take me. So I believe that I felt the way that I felt when I was 12 years old because here's this man who's supposed to be my father that's supposed to love, honor, protect, and provide, and he's doing the opposite, so something must be wrong with me. And so this, you know, I've gotten jumped up here, I've gotten into a lot of fist fights up here, but this is kind of where it like all began for me in terms of like me getting in trouble in my drug addiction. But this is also where I started hanging out with my children's father, my two oldest daughters, Lainey and Olivia. Their father, Timmy, and I, you know, he was part of the pit crew a little bit. He would hang down this end sometimes, and sometimes he would hang down the other end. And he'll be dead 6 years on the 11th from an overdose. I stayed sober and got through it, but there was a moment where I was ready to just use because I just wanted the pain to go away. His backpack actually got delivered to my house. I was home alone. I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't showering, and I opened the backpack and I found probably the batch of heroin or fentanyl that killed him. And I thought about, that's how evil like this disease is and insidious, right? So I believe that God has a purpose for my life, and it's to use what was meant for my harm for good. And so I have an enemy that wants to take me out and not help people, you know? And so this backpack gets delivered to my house, and there's the black tar heroin, and I thought about using it, and I said, God, you have to help me, and I flushed it down the toilet.
Well, you know, when you're young like that and you grow up in this town, you don't deal with feelings or anything, so you just go through life. It was hard. My whole life got uprooted. I had to go live with an aunt and an uncle while my mother spent the time in the hospital, you know. Soon after that, I picked up alcohol and drugs, and, you know, life went on, you know. I got sober 17 and a half years ago. I was using for 24 and a half years, but it wasn't, I accumulated things. I bought a house in Wilmington. I met a girl, I had the kids, and then when we bought the house, I built an upstairs apartment for my mom. She lived up there. She was my biggest enabler, and when she passed away, you know, the money wasn't there, the help wasn't there. I ended up losing the home and coming back to Charlestown, which for me was a blessing because this is the town I love. I grew up here, you know. They always say you can take the kid out of Charlestown, but you can't take the Charlestown out of the kid. This is where my life was. Even when I lived in Wilmington, we were here every day, you know. But yeah, it was right, that's where the awning is right there. That was my apartment that burned down. My uncles lived right next door to me. I went from living with my mom, who was a free spirit, to an aunt that was very strict, and life just changed, you know. When I look back on it now, it's probably what made me the man I am today. You know, I learned how to deal with a lot of stuff on my own. I learned how to fend for myself. You know, I started working down the street down here at the age of 14. My cousin ran a dairy company. I started work. I'd go to school, I'd work, I'd go home, you know, do my homework, go to bed, and do the same thing over and over again. So at a young age, I learned how to fend for myself, you know. It was different than most kids my age, you know, but it is what it is, you know. I learned to live with it, and, you know, looking back, it gave me the work ethic and the drive as a young kid that propels me today.
The first year after Stephen passed, I couldn't eat, sleep. The community of Charlestown, strangers, and people in the community helped me get through it. Strangers. I didn't have no money to bury my son. And within days, the phone never stopped. We did a GoFundMe, and we were able to raise enough money to bury my son at Carr's funeral home here in Charlestown.
A lot of the friends that were my close core group of friends that I hung up here with, they're all dead. I'm one of the only ones alive. My best guy friend, his name was Paul. We hung here together for years. We were the best of friends. We stole cars together. I mean, we had fun, I'm not gonna lie. I couldn't picture one of my daughters stealing a car, but we did everything together and we confided in each other about a lot of like deep things, you know, and he died in April 5th, 2009, and was waked on my birthday, April 9th. Another kid, Timmy McLaughlin, you know, there's just so many. Joe Burns, you know, Scott Isbot, Michael Duncan, Jill Doherty, all my friends are dead. I have group pictures of me with like 10 to 15 people and I'm the only one alive. But yet I was the one a lot of people were placing bets on that would go first because that's how bad I was in my addiction and getting into trouble.
This is the Charlestown High School field. This is where I played Pop Warner as a kid. You know, this is the day of my fire. It was November 18th. It was snowing out. And this is where when I see my mom come out of the window, you know, this is where I came. I came down here and I started running the track barefoot in a pair of pajama bottoms. It's always played a big part in my life. You know, this is where I always came, like the water, the field. This is where I always came to deal with my emotions and feelings. You know, and so that day that it happened, this is what I knew. So this is where I came, and because I was playing, it was football season. I just started running the track like I was at a football practice, because I didn't know how else to deal with what was going on.
We would usually always like sit on the walls. These cars weren't usually here, but we would sit right here. We would drink, we would laugh, we would listen to music, you know, smoke weed. This is definitely where my addiction progressed, because I went from drinking to smoking weed to taking pills. There was a lot of hard times, a lot of fights, a lot of crime. And you know, I mean, I'm not ashamed to say that I was part of that because I didn't know what I didn't know, but it also shaped me into the person that I am, and I'm able to use my experiences to relate to others who want help. I didn't even know that was there. So, this sign, this must be new or it hasn't been here that long, but it says, please be alert for needles and other related paraphernalia. Someone is actively using in this space and casually discards used needles. Please call 311 for needle pickup and 911 to report suspicious activity. So a lot of people come in here, obviously, because it's a closed space, it's a closed area, and they use. Yeah, it sucks that they're in here using and that they're just kind of discarding needles and throwing them anywhere. At the same time, people are sick. They're not bad people trying to get good, they're sick people trying to get well. And so I think we need to keep that up front.
My name is Javon, and we're at the Charlestown Boys and Girls Club. I've been a member there since I was a kid. A lot of the staff there were people that I've known my whole life, and they impacted me, and they caused me to go into youth work. The trauma team is a group of people from the community who just they want to help people. You know, we want to help the people within our community. We want to respond to things that happen within our communities. We want to help the kids. We want to help parents. We want to help all the members of the community, older people. We try to respond to different. If there's a shooting in the neighborhood, we'll respond to that. We'll try to make sure families are okay. If there is somebody just loses someone, an elder, a parent, to sickness, we respond to that. You know, we make sure that they have money, food, and resources they need.
The Charlestown Trauma Response Team is a group of, most of them are community members that are natural leaders in the community. And we have a clinician from Mass General Hospital in Charlestown, but it was built out of the Charlestown Coalition. Years ago, when anything would happen in the community, whether it was overdose or community violence, the Charlestown Coalition would naturally respond, and that's how the Trauma Response Team came about.
The Trauma Response Team is a big part of my life right now. We respond to certain traumas. Like it started right before a kid, Ryan Morrissey, was murdered, another one of my son's friends. There was a lot of violence going on in Charlestown at the time. Steve had been killed. We decided to start a trauma response team, and I've learned how to respond to trauma. I've done trainings with them.
I grew up around, of course, all the armored car robbers. Some of the advice I got from my parents were don't talk to cops and reporters, they're both out to get you. Never trust a man without a vice. So, you know, it was always about drinking and drugging. And, you know, as a result, I did the same. And my family would put wagers on me that I'd never make it to 20 years old. I'd get shot, I'd get stabbed again. And then they'd say I'd never make it past 25 years old. You know, and lo and behold, I could never understand how a package this big could have so much control over my entire life. I'm a kid that started in Boston Latin and ended up in Boston State Pre-Release. You know, it's where my disease took me. I've experienced a lot of trauma. I'd be here for days if I was to tell you some of the insanity that I was surrounded by. My uncle was murdered, you know, and you know, part of that happening was here in this particular area. But I lost my child to the disease of addiction, broke his back playing high school football, got strung out in his pain meds. Hi, Kev. I lost my only two siblings, Jimmy and Kevin, you know, all within a 6-month time frame. My son and my only two siblings. My entire immediate family, mom, dad, and 2 brothers, never made it beyond 52 years old. So obviously I feel blessed to do the work that I do with the trauma team.
I have a hard time saying like it's normal to do Narcan trainings and it's normal to constantly bury people or hear about another person who passed away due to overdose, but it's not normal that this is normal, right? So tonight we're here with the Charlestown Coalition at one of the community centers at one of the developments in Charlestown, Mswati Park. And we held a Narcan training here tonight through the Boston Public Health Commission, AHOPE. And we had a facilitator here tonight who talked about overdose signs and symptoms, prevention basics, and Narcan administration. So this is a 4 milligram dose of nasal Narcan spray. And so this is 2 doses inside of 1. So when you want to administer Narcan to somebody, you just put it up 1 nostril, the left or the right, you don't have to put it up both, and you spray it, and it distributes all of the Narcan that's inside of this container. When you administer the Narcan, that's when you call 911, and you just really try to talk some sense into the person and let them know what's going on, let them know that they might get sick a little bit, you know, because of the Narcan administration, and just really try to encourage them to go to the hospital.
The trauma team itself has impacted my life tremendously, you know. I've learned so much through the trainings, you know, how to deal with my own feelings, how to help other people. You know, we did trainings with people from the city, taught me how to breathe. The trainings were actually supposed to be for us to help people when we respond to trauma, but they helped me tremendously too, like the breathing exercises and for me personally, how to recognize someone that's in trauma. When the trauma team started, there was a lot of violence going on. People were getting shot at, and we would respond, and we would have meetings. When the trauma team started, I found a new purpose, you know, something that makes me feel whole. And, you know, giving back has always been a part of my life. You know, since I've been sober, I try to give back everything I can. I used to not be an integral part of this community, and now I am, and it's all because of sobriety and the trauma team. You know, I've met some great people that have impacted my life, and it's something that I want to keep pursuing and keep learning, because you can never as far as I'm concerned, you could teach an old dog new tricks. I'm all about learning. And last year, my kids came into the house and they told me, you got Narcan. And one of their friends was ODing, and I went over there, he was blue. You know, he was no pulse, he was blue. And because of the training I learned on the trauma team, I was able to bring that child back to life. And, you know, just that alone was an amazing feeling. And it's something that I wouldn't have been able to do if I hadn't been on the trauma team.
So we are on Main Street in Charlestown, across from Mswati Park Apartments, and at A1 convenience store, which used to be known as Doyle's. And it was 8 years ago on November 5th that there was a shooting out here, and two individuals who were kind of in the wrong place at the wrong time were shot. So one of them was 17-year-old Ryan Deuce Morrissey, and the other one was Jamie Lawton. And sadly, 8 years ago today, Ryan Morrissey lost his life due to that gunshot. It was a very traumatic time in the community. Deuce was a great kid. You know, he was never in any trouble, played a lot of sports, had aspiring dreams of being a firefighter. And the community kind of fell to its knees because of it. But the community also came together like I've never seen before because of it. These purple ribbons were hung up in August, the end of August. So August is Overdose Awareness Month. August 31st is Overdose Awareness Day. Charlestown at one point had the highest fatal overdose rate in Massachusetts in 1 square mile. These purple ribbons represent awareness. They represent recovery, and it's to give hope to those that are still suffering with addiction.
My name is Zaya Richardson, and we are currently at the PFA training, where we are learning how to do psychological training for trauma events. I have been on the opposite end of receiving resources and help after traumatic events, and just basically having that mentorship and that safety net and the support around me gave me the courage and the gratitude to want to go out and do it for other people in the community, because I know I'm not the first person to struggle, not to be the last person to struggle. So it's a sense of reward that I get back to be able to return back to, especially to my direct community, what I learned from the people that helped me get to where I am today. It's very rewarding to have a community that has different races, different diversities of groups that can come together and have this shared agreement that we do need to support each other, we do need help, we do need community resources, especially because we have the realization or the epiphany that no matter what side of Charlestown you're from or wherever you grew up at, whatever affects you up here is going to affect someone down there, whatever affects someone down there, vice versa. So it's just nice to have everyone finally come to the realization that we work better together than apart. But we always had that type of sense of moral, towny pride, but it's just nicer to be more genuine about it and not have it as a competition.
My name is Linda Forsyth. I'm a child psychiatrist, and I focus on root cause resolution, which is how the problem happened, and trauma healing. Trauma can be defined in many ways. The way that I have found most useful and the most helpful is to define it as the effect on the nervous system. So trauma would be when a nervous system is overwhelmed. The nervous system is as a mug. It can hold enough. At a certain point, it's going to spill over. Trauma is when it spills over. So there's a lot of ways we can manage what's in the nervous system. We can help support it. Events can occur, but as soon as it's full, it's full. One thing we can do with trauma healing is to expand the capacity of the nervous system, and then even an overflow can overflow into a larger container. So that's some of what the trauma healing is. And when I say root cause resolution, it has to do with saying not what's the name of the problem. We use that to be diagnoses. It's not what are the symptoms of the problem. We also use that with diagnoses. It's what is the root cause of the problem, and we aim at the root cause, and the symptoms and the definition of the diagnosis disappear. So that's another example of how it can happen outside of a clinic setting if we get to the root cause.
I dealt with a lot of trauma in my life. Well, I didn't deal with it. Growing up here, we just kept everything bottled inside, and knowing the things that happened with me I don't want other people to have to do that. You know, growing up here, like I said, we were a different breed. You didn't talk about anything. You kept everything inside. You just learned to deal with it on your own. And for me personally, it was the wrong thing to do, you know, because it affected my life, the rest of my life, you know, anger issues. You know, I don't want to blame the drugs and alcohol on the trauma, but, you know, it played a part in it because it would take me out of myself. And I don't want to see other kids suffer like that, you know. Trauma is it's a really big thing. It's a powerful thing. And it can really affect your mindset and other things like that. So for me personally, I just want to try and help anybody that has dealt with trauma so they don't have to suppress the feelings and have those issues that I had growing up.
I wasn't really able to engage too much with people. The trauma overcame me. And with that pain, I realized that when my son was murdered that day, that I was allowing the person who killed him to take me too. So I started basically reaching out and engaging. And it was with my team first. And then it became with people that hasn't seen me in the community, to being able to have a conversation. But it was very hard. Everyone just was like, we haven't seen you. How are you doing? How are you doing? And there was a lot of anger. And I had to deal with the anger of people that loved me, asking me how I was doing, but my spirit was so broken. What I've learned also is that I'm not alone. And Stephen used to say it all the time. They never left me alone. Even when I was in the darkness, they would always still ring that phone. And just to know that someone's there to pick it up, and it has been our trauma team, not just for me, for others in this community. And we have a hotline now. We are escalating our resources, whether we're funded or not. We're here, and it took the village of that team to love me enough to love me, to go back in, to love others, and to know that I'm not alone.
The trauma response team in Charlestown is a powerful group, and I'm constantly impressed. The depth of their experience is a lot of what's so valuable, and how they have offered up their authentic being to connect with another person in whatever moment they're in. So imagine if you are feeling like your nervous system is overwhelmed and one of the folks on the trauma team comes along. They have built-in capacity, they've worked on it, and they have lived it, so you can allow them to participate in the easing of your suffering so that they can bring you some safety and support.
I'm still processing and or learning about trauma. I have been through a lot of near-death experiences. Like, I have been hit by a car, my house has been targeted of shooting, I've been held at gunpoint. And so I talk about this in a very calmly manner, or like just passive manner of just like saying these like traumatic events, only because I'm still processing on how trauma directly affects you. And as I am learning today, I would put myself in the category of someone that has long-term trauma later on in life. Like, I'm more so always the person that goes into survival mode, and like knowing that I still have to go to work the next week, and like making sure I still have to like help my mom out with bills, and making sure that I'm together enough just to function bare minimum. But I did learn that trauma stays in the body. Like, we are like a hydraulic system. Like, whatever you put in is going to stay in there, keep pumping up and down. So it's just my main focus right now, personally for myself, is to figure out what trauma that I have stored in my body, because I do know there is a lot, especially from past tense history, that I never like properly dealt with. And so I'm just looking to figure out, one, how I can figure out where the trauma is stored in my body, because it doesn't go anywhere, and how to release it in a healthy way, because this is the first time I got through one of these interviews without crying about what I've been through. And not because it does still affect me, but not in everyday life, but just because I never dealt with those exact emotions that I had in that present times. I always call it a happy accident that I am a part of the trauma team, part of the Charlestown Coalition, only because I didn't technically go to school for it or like have the technical training where it comes to it, but I have all the experience that you need. Like, since 13 years old, I've been in nonprofit organizations, and I just had a knack for like one, connecting with people and just hearing like everyone's walks of life and being able to connect no matter what you've been through or where you've been like through it. And so that's the one thing for me that like makes me prideful about it, like being a part of the Charlestown community, just because they were able to help me get to the position that I always wanted and being able to give back, but on a larger scale. Like I never thought I would be able to be in the position I am today. So just being in the Charlestown Coalition is everything for me.
Trauma in Charlestown's a part of life. You know, you grow up. There was, when I was a kid, there was shootings or stabbings all the time, you know, and that's what happened. One particular day I was sitting right here on these bleachers. I don't know exactly where I was sitting, but I was sitting right here on these bleachers watching the Charlestown High football game, and a shot rang out from behind us. I dumped down below the bleachers. A young man who was playing football was down here at halftime, fell to the ground. He ended up getting shot in the neck. The kid was paralyzed for life, you know, and that's just stuff that we grew up with, it was kind of like you were used to it in Charlestown. You know, when I moved to Wilmington, people used to say, what was it like moving from Charlestown to Wilmington? I said, I went from listening to gunshots to crickets.
When I think of my own personal healing, I guess when I first got sober or clean or in recovery, I wasn't really thinking about that. I was just thinking about kind of getting like the drugs out of my system. I thought like, oh, once the drugs are out of my system, I'll be okay, not realizing that the drugs and alcohol were just a symptom of underlying issues, my trauma, right? And so I had to do the work. I had to work on myself. It's an inside job, right? I could be clean and look great on the outside and I'd just be a dressed up garbage can, right? You know, so it's an inside job. And so as far as my own personal healing goes, you know, I had to go to meetings. I had to participate in my recovery. I've had the same therapist since I was 12 years old, and I'm 41 and I still see him today. And so he's probably one of the first guys that never left me. He knows everything about me since I was 12 years old. And the reason why I started working with him is because it was actually me, my younger sister who's a year younger than me, my brother who's 2 years younger than me. We had to go see him because we, you know, witnessed abuse in our home. And so my sister never wanted to go. She would always like fight it. And my brother would say he was gonna go and never show up. So I was always the only one showing up. And I don't know why I went. I don't know why I kept going to these appointments, but I did. And I remember him saying to me, Shannon, I knew you were different at 12 years old, meaning from like most kids my age.
My experience with trauma is that you have to be kind to yourself, know your people, use your people. In the beginning, it's so difficult. The physical pain, the emotional pain are all wrapped in together, and it hurts physically, emotionally, mentally. It's crippling. And if you can find something to do to alleviate that even a little bit, you just got to take it and run with it. In the beginning, it's so hard. You got to keep it in the day, and sometimes in the minute or the second. But as time goes on, you realize that as scary as it is, as difficult as it is, you're making it every single day. I would say to anybody that's in trauma, find your people, hang on tight, keep talking, keep feeling. As tough as it is, as hard as it is, as painful as it is, you gotta move on, and you will move on, and you will get to the end.
Being part of the trauma team has impacted my life in a way that I've never thought before. I'm just so grateful to be able to give back to my community and be a part of the healing that needs to take place. I do realize though, one of my own trauma responses is to help others. That's how I respond to my own trauma, is to kind of like run into the fire and help other people, or help whenever there's a situation going on. I really believe it's part of my purpose to kind of like just give back and serve others. I believe we're made for human connection. And the world we live in today, people are always out for themselves. And I don't want to be remembered for that. I don't want to be thought of as a person who just lived for herself. Like, I am passionate about helping other people relieve their burdens, and just kind of doing whatever I can to show them love, that people do care, and we want you to do well, and we want you to be successful, and we want you to get through whatever you're going through and come out on the other side.
I became involved with the trauma team, obviously a lot sooner than before my son died, but I saw some of the remarkable work that they did. Just, I remember when a kid, Deucey, 17-year-old kid, was murdered, and I watched the work, again, that the trauma team did. They just showed up. They didn't say anything. They provided waters. They provided basic examples of wellness and how to take care of yourself, and they just showed a genuine concern. And so I was attracted to that. I was attracted, as much as I did what I did around this neighborhood, I was attracted to the heroes. I was attracted to the people that were trying to make a difference around this 1 square mile. And I don't think I could have made a better decision in my life.
For those of you who are out there feeling hopeless, there is hope. You know, I was there. I was at that point in my life where, you know, that bridge right behind me was going to be my next option, you know, and I decided to try a different way, and you know, I was, at that point, that was the lowest point in my life. You know, I had 5 children, a beautiful wife, and I didn't want to live anymore because of the way my life was. And you know, I get into recovery, and my life changed around, and today I live a wonderful life. And you know, if you're struggling, just keep at it. Ask for help. That was the biggest thing for me to do, was to ask somebody for help, because I didn't know where to go. I didn't know which direction to go in. And you know, luckily for me, I had the right people enter my life that showed me the direction that I should go in, and for them I'll be forever grateful. And today, like I said, I live a wonderful life. I have 5 wonderful kids, a beautiful wife. I have a granddaughter. I have another grandchild on the way. And if I had taken that bridge option, I would have missed all of that. So there's always hope for people. You just gotta fight through those failings, and realize there's something better for you out there.
If you aren't a trusted person in the community, then your contribution is often overwhelming, and I think can even make it worse, right? If you have access to somebody's trust, which is built on needs met, then, you know, trust is, I had a need, it was met, and I can count on this situation, this person, these people, this concept to help me the next time, so it's a safe place to go with my overwhelm. If you haven't done that cycle of connecting to a need and having the need met, attachment and trust isn't created. And so that's a basic part. And the beautiful thing about this trauma team is they are embedded, and nobody has to ask, do they care? And seeing them can soothe and support the people in Charlestown.
You know, I'm an individual who has stage 4 cancer, you know, and you know, at times I've wanted to throw my cards in, especially after burying my child, you know, and some of the stuff that I've experienced in life. But the only thing I'm trying to do is make a difference, even if it's a little bit of a difference. I'm trying to spare another father from the same pain that I've experienced. And so that's why I became a part of the trauma team. Again, I love to be surrounded by miracle workers. If we don't do the work, who does? Okay, when I was a kid going to this particular school, the Kennedy Center School, also known as the Kent, another one of the Kent buildings, I didn't know what I was up against, okay? I just wanted to be cool. I just wanted to have a good time. I didn't know that trying to be cool would turn into me giving up 16 years of my life in prison. It would, you know, It would mean me getting shot twice, having 28 stab wounds in my body. Like, this wasn't in the cards. You know, I wasn't supposed to walk up to my mother's coffin in a pair of leg irons. Like, you know, again, I was supposed to get sober long before this happened. You know, but today I celebrate almost 12 years of sobriety, and I couldn't feel more blessed. And I guess what I really wanted to say is, I never understood what it means to have spirituality in your life. Now we're staring at the St. Catherine's School, which is now a Dollar Tree store. You know, yes, I was taught the meaning of God, but I never understood the meaning of spirituality, okay? Spirituality just simply means having spirit, being inspired, you know, to have the privilege of working with individuals like Sarah Coughlin, Shannon Lundeen, Phenice Zawatsky, Susan Rollinson, Elaine Donovan, I mean, all of them, Georgie Dighton. If you could only begin to imagine the work they've done over the years, you'd be amazed. So again, I truly feel blessed as a result of it. And it was only because of the lesson I learned in this particular area.